I knew the exact second Vanguard Heavy Industries was doomed. It was not when quarterly profits dipped, nor when founder Rupert Thorne retired to a Sarasota hospice. No, it was when his 36-year-old son, Julian Thorne, stepped out of a silver Porsche wearing silk loafers with no socks in a facility processing volatile solvents and superheated steam. He possessed teeth bleached to a shade that violated nature, paired with an executive master of business administration from a private school that likely accepted crayon drawings as a master thesis. He looked like an artificial intelligence prompt, requesting a finance bro who believed manual labor was merely a quaint hobby. I watched him from my second-floor glass office, overlooking the production floor of Plant 7. Plant 7 was a sprawling manufacturing facility in Central Florida where humidity hung like a wet blanket and indoor temperature felt like a furnace. My name is Harlan Vance. I am 56 years old, and for 24 years, I served as Director of Safety and Compliance. For nearly a quarter century, I was the sole reason 280 industrial workers walked out those steel gates every evening, with all 10 fingers attached. I am the corporate fun police, the senior safety director who makes grown tradesmen hide uncertified extension cords. On that Tuesday morning, Julian walked across the heavy forklift lane while texting on his smartphone. I sighed, took a sip of lukewarm coffee, and tapped on the glass window. He did not look up. A veteran forklift operator named Gus Miller slammed his hydraulic brakes to a screeching halt, shaking a load of corrosive catalyst drums. Julian did not flinch. He kept walking with that specific invincibility that comes from never having been crushed by a hydraulic press. If you enjoy watching arrogant legacy hires get dismantled by strict state regulations, hit subscribe and leave a like. It keeps our team operating safer than a certified lockout procedure. The mandatory all-hands meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock on the assembly floor. Under old Rupert Thorne, an all-hands gathering meant standing on a shipping crate, shouting production targets, and asking about workers' children by name. Julian had grandiose visions. He had a stage built overnight with a sound system costing more than my quarterly safety budget. He strutted onto that stage, wearing a wireless headset microphone, like he was delivering a motivational tech talk. The assembly workers stared up with cold eyes. Team Julian booming through the rafters. We are living in the past. My father built a respectable framework, but foundations are meant to be built upon, not lived in for decades. He paused for applause, but the only sound was an iron socket wrench, dropping onto concrete half a football field away. We need to get lean, Julian continued. I have audited our overhead costs. We have far too much structural redundancy, too many procedural checks, and too many regulatory balances. We are moving slow because we are afraid to run. My stomach tightened. In my line of work, running means slipping on a chemical spill and fracturing your skull. Redundancy was the exact reason. Plant 7 had not suffered a fatal incident since 2004. Julian pointed a manicured finger at the crowd. Effective immediately, we are launching Operation Velocity. We are slicing away non-essential fat. If a process does not directly generate quarterly revenue, it is on the chopping block. We are no longer just a chemical plant. We are a dynamic brand. I felt shift supervisors drift their eyes toward me. Non-revenue generating did not mean cutting paper clips. It meant deferring maintenance. It meant canceling safety audits. It meant eliminating me. Following the presentation, which featured aggressive optimization, 8 times in 15 minutes, I intercepted Julian near the break room. Mr. Thorne, I said, keeping my tone neutral. I am Harlan Vance, Director of Safety and Compliance. He looked me up and down, his eyes glazing over my steel-toed boots and high-visibility vest. I was not a clean financial spreadsheet. I was a statutory obstacle. "Ah, Harlan," Julian said, tapping his smartwatch. "You spend more capital on preventative hazard training than our marketing department spends on client acquisition." "That is because marketing campaigns do not prevent superheated steam from vaporizing an operator's lungs," I replied. "We have a statutory safety audit of primary steam pressure valves on Line 3 scheduled for next Tuesday. The line must be taken offline for 16 hours of testing." Julian let out a dry laugh. "Taking Line 3 offline? Absolutely not. We are in a critical sprint phase. Cancel the downtime. Run the assembly lines continuously. We have international distribution contracts to fulfill and executive board investors to impress. Those primary pressure valves are rated for a maximum of 4,000 continuous operating hours, I stated. As of 6 o'clock this morning, they crossed 4,750 hours. If a primary housing seal ruptures under 850 pounds per square inch of pressure, it will blow an iron crater through the roof of Plant 7. He stepped closer, invading my workspace with luxury cologne. You compliance officers are all identical. You exist in a theoretical world of hypothetical what-ifs. Line 3 will run at 125% capacity starting tomorrow morning. Evolve with changing market conditions, or find yourself extinct. He patted my shoulder like a golden retriever and walked down the hallway typing on his mobile phone. I remained still under the fluorescent lights. He genuinely believed he was the apex predator simply because his father's name was on the payroll checks. Inside a chemical facility, heavy machinery is the apex predator, and I was the master zookeeper keeping the beasts caged. If he intended to override a statutory audit, so be it. I walked back to my office, unlocked my iron fireproof safe, and pulled out a fresh refusal of hazardous work order based on imminent danger. Evolve or go extinct, I remarked softly. Be careful what you ask for, young man. The decay of a manufacturing site does not occur in a single explosive moment. It is a slow erosion of discipline that accelerates into structural failure. Under Operation Velocity, that erosion transformed into an avalanche. Within 14 days, Plant 7 dissolved into frantic panic. Seasoned shift leads kept their mouths shut, knowing safety complaints meant being optimized out the front gate. I began arriving at 5 o'clock every morning, conducting walk-through inspections before the first shift clocked in. The giant industrial air scrubbers were emitting a high-pitched strain because their filtration units had passed their replacement date by 12 days. On Thursday morning, I discovered 3 young temporary workers near the primary corrosive mixing vats, holding thousands of gallons of acidic compounds. The workers were wearing canvas sneakers and zero-chemical aprons. One had basic safety goggles perched on his hat while tilting a reactive chemical canister into an open hopper. "Stop right where you are," I shouted. I grabbed the canister and pulled it away from the vat rim. "Who authorized you to work on an active chemical deck without personal protective gear?" "The new operations supervisor, Mr. Knox, told us to skip the heavy suits," the kid stammered. "He said safety gear was slowing down our hourly loading quota." Cold, methodical anger settled into my chest. "Get off this catwalk immediately," I commanded. "Report to the break room and do not touch another machine." I walked straight to my office and drafted Memo 4002, detailing specific regulatory codes under OSHA Section 19.132 and federal statutory fines. 10 minutes later, I received an email from Director of Operations Spencer Knox, a 31-year-old former fraternity brother. "Harlan, let us not become alarmist. We are utilizing agile staffing models to bridge operational gaps. Focus on team solutions rather than administrative roadblocks. Thanks." That afternoon, corporate madness reached its peak. Julian ordered a rebranding celebration inside Zone 4 of the main warehouse, a high-hazard flammable storage area under state fire codes. Event planners erected cocktail tables alongside stacked pallets of volatile oxidizers. They brought in caterers and a disc jockey. Visiting investors in business suits sipped champagne, while a forklift parked 5 feet away actively dripped hydraulic fluid onto the floor. A camera drone buzzed through the air, hovering close to ceiling sprinkler heads. I pulled out my phone and captured time-stamped photographs of the champagne bar blocking the primary emergency fire exit. "Enjoying the celebration, Harlan?" Julian asked, holding a glass of champagne. "You have placed a catering bar directly in front of the primary emergency exit, Mr. Thorne," I said. "If a chemical fire ignites, investors will have less than 45 seconds to evacuate before toxic smoke fills the ceiling cavity." Julian rolled his eyes. "You are an absolute killjoy, Harlan. We are showing Wall Street that manufacturing can be dynamic." "Statutory safety violations carry criminal liability, Julian," I replied. "Did you review Memo 4002 regarding uncertified temp workers?" "Spencer handled that," Julian dismissed. "I am hearing complaints that your documentation is creating an operational bottleneck. Consider this a formal verbal warning. Either align with Project Velocity or we will reevaluate whether your position is a fit. I did not argue. I turned around, walked back to my office, and opened my safe. Inside sat a heavy black binder labeled The Thorn Files. I printed Spencer Knox's email reply, attached time-stamped photographs of blocked emergency exits, and filed reports regarding uncertified temp workers. Reevaluate my fit, I remarked to the empty room. I was no longer merely maintaining compliance records. I was systematically constructing a legal coffin. The executive leadership meeting on Monday morning took place inside the glass-walled fishbowl conference room. Under old Rupert, these meetings were brief and focused on operational reality. Under Julian, they were dramatic performance art. The long conference table was surrounded by Julian's executive team alongside exhausted department heads. I walked in carrying a single manila folder containing the Line 3 mechanical audit. Julian stood at a whiteboard, drawing energetic arrows toward dollar symbols. "Our third quarter projections are extraordinary, team," Julian announced. "If we maintain this daily volume, our corporate valuation will jump 25% prior to our investor roadshow next month." He turned to me, his smile tightening. "Harlan, I trust your update will be brief." "It concerns primary steam pressure valves on Line 3, I said, sliding the folder across the mahogany table. As of 8 o'clock this morning, those valves reached 4,750 continuous operating hours. That is 750 hours past manufacturer-certified structural integrity ratings. Thermal imaging sensors register continuous micro-vibrations in the valve housing. Line 3 must be shut down immediately for emergency maintenance." The conference room went silent. The only sound was Spencer Knox nervously tapping his pen. Julian did not open the folder. He looked at it as though I had placed a dead rodent on his desk. "Shut down Line 3? Julian repeated with exaggerated disbelief. "Take our highest producing chemical line offline 2 days before the most critical investor walkthrough in company history. Physical laws do not care about investor walkthroughs or quarterly valuations." "Mr. Thorne," I stated, "if that valve housing suffers structural shear, it will release superheated steam at 850 pounds per square inch. At that pressure, superheated steam is invisible and will sever a human body in half." I have attached the official state safety report from a similar valve failure in Tampa for reference. Julian picked up the folder by its corner. "I think you are profoundly addicted to organizational drama, Harlan," he said. "You invent these theatrical emergencies so you can justify your massive overhead salary. Without these invented catastrophes, what are you? A non-revenue generating cost center." "I am the sole reason this facility possesses a legal state license to operate," I said. Julian stood up and walked deliberately over to the heavy industrial paper shredder in the corner. "We are finished letting fear dictate our operational speed," Julian said, holding my report over the feed slot. "This document, along with your vibration logs, represents a waste of corporate resources. And frankly, so does your presence on this management team." He turned on the shredder and fed the manila folder into the mechanical teeth. The machine let out a harsh grinding screech as steel blades chewed through vibration logs, thermal readouts, and safety warnings. Julian maintained direct eye contact, wearing a triumphant smile as 24 years of professional safety standards turned into paper confetti. "Pack your personal items and vacate the premises immediately, Harlan," Julian declared. "You are terminated. Vanguard Heavy Industries is transitioning to a self-monitoring safety framework. We no longer require a director of no." The room remained frozen. I experienced a strange sense of absolute clarity, the feeling of having a heavy structural burden lifted off my shoulders and handed entirely to the unforgiving laws of physics and state regulation. "Understood, Mr. Thorne," I said quietly. My calm tone visibly unnerved him. I walked out of the fishbowl, retrieved my personal items and the Thorne files from my safe, and logged into my corporate terminal one final time. I navigated directly to the official Florida State Division of Industrial Safety portal. I accessed the State Safety Director Certification Registry for Facility Permit Class 4, the statutory permit authorizing Plant 7 to handle hazardous chemical and high-pressure steam operations. I selected the Active Safety Officer of Record field, clicked Resign Statutory Commission, and entered my credentials. A red system confirmation dialog appeared. Warning: deauthorizing primary certified safety officer without a verified state-approved replacement will result in immediate suspension of facility operating permit. Permit Class 4 upon expiration of the statutory 36-hour grace period. Confirm? I thought of the shredded safety audit, the uncertified temp workers without eye protection, and the pressure valve vibrating under 850 pounds per square inch of steam. I clicked confirm. I walked out to my truck in the sweltering Florida heat and dialed a number saved for over a decade. Hello. A rough voice answered on the second ring. Chief Inspector Lawson, I said calmly. It is Harlan Vance. Tell me, how does your audit calendar look for Friday morning? The drive from Plant 7 to my coastal residence in Sarasota was normally a 45-minute battle through congested traffic. On that Monday afternoon, the drive felt completely effortless. I rolled my windows down, letting the humid Gulf breeze fill the cab. I was not worried about my mortgage. I had spent 24 years maintaining substantial financial reserves. I possessed the absolute serenity of a professional who knows exactly where every structural defect is buried because he inspected the foundation. My phone buzzed with a text from the human resources manager. Harlan, I am deeply sorry about the meeting. Julian wants me to prepare a severance agreement, but he is insisting you sign a sweeping non-disclosure agreement first. Please do not take drastic actions, I chuckled quietly. Drastic actions? I was simply letting the statutory clock run its course. I tapped my Bluetooth headset to connect with Chief Inspector Lawson at the State Division of Industrial Safety. Lawson was known throughout the Florida Industrial Corridor as Iron Mike. He was a veteran state enforcement officer who wore a hard hat to official meetings and possessed eyes capable of spotting an ungrounded electrical chassis from 50 yards away. For 15 years, Lawson and I had engaged in professional combat. I fought meticulously to keep Plant 7 fully compliant with state mandates, while he inspected every square inch looking for statutory infractions. We shared deep mutual respect. Harlan, Lawson said, his raspy voice cutting through the speaker. Are you calling to argue about pressure vessel testing standards again? No, Chief, I replied. I am calling to ask if your department has reviewed active permit filings for Vanguard Heavy Industries Facility Class 4 today. There was a pause, followed by rapid typing on a mechanical keyboard. Lawson's tone shifted dramatically. I see the filing, Harlan. You submitted a formal resigned statutory commission at 11:42 this morning. You were the only certified individual keeping that facility legally operational. Did you retire? I was optimized out of the organization, Chief, I explained. Executive management determines safety compliance is a non-revenue generating obstacle. Lawson let out a cold laugh. Who is your certified replacement? The law explicitly dictates a 36-hour statutory grace period to register a state-certified interim safety director, or all hazardous chemical and steam operations must immediately cease. There is no certified replacement, Chief. There is only a 36-year-old heir named Julian Thorne who believes state safety codes are optional guidelines and who personally fed my line. 3 emergency valve audit into a paper shredder. He shredded a primary valve safety audit. Lawson's voice dropped, turning deadly quiet line. 3 primary steam valves, 4,750 operating hours, active thermal vibration logs, I detailed precisely. He ordered the line to run continuously at 125% capacity to impress institutional investors during a live walkthrough on Friday morning. Lawson cracked his knuckles into the microphone. Harlan, are you officially off the corporate payroll? I am currently a private citizen enjoying a quiet drive down the coast, I confirmed. Excellent, Lawson said. Then you will have no objection if the State Division of Industrial Safety conducts an unannounced emergency site inspection of Plant 7 on Friday morning. It appears my calendar just cleared up completely. Friday morning at 10 o'clock sharp would be ideal, Chief, I suggested. They are hosting an investor presentation with catering, red carpet entrances, and promotional drones flying inside Zone 4. Drones inside a Class B volatile storage zone? Lawson scoffed. That constitutes an immediate violation of state hazardous airspace statutes. I am adding it to the inspection warrant. Will you be in the area, Harlan? I might park across the street to collect my remaining personal effects from the perimeter, I said smoothly. You are a dangerous man, Harlan Vance, Lawson remarked. I'm not dangerous, Chief. I'm simply compliant with state law. I hung up and pulled into my driveway. Over the next 3 days, I enjoyed the quiet comfort of my home while Julian Thorne unknowingly marched Plant 7 toward legal destruction. Corporate executives believe safety compliance is merely wearing hard hats. They fail to understand that modern industrial safety is fundamentally built upon statutory officer liability. 24 years ago, old Rupert Thorne established Plant 7 under a binding state covenant. Facility Class 4 permits required a named, state-certified safety director whose personal license was attached to the operating charter. If that certified officer resigned or was terminated without an immediate certified replacement, the permit entered automatic statutory probation. Julian had failed to read the company charter. He assumed firing me was no different than replacing an administrative assistant. By Thursday afternoon, the statutory 36-hour grace period expired. The state automated compliance system flagged Plant 7 as an unsupervised, uncertified hazardous site. Meanwhile, Julian posted continuous updates on social media, boasting about breaking production records under Operation Velocity and sharing videos of Line 3 running at full capacity. I took high-resolution screenshots of every post, documenting red-lined pressure gauges visible in background footage. At 4 o'clock on Thursday, Spencer Knox called my personal phone, sounding completely panicked. Harlan, we have a minor technical situation. We cannot find the administrative override code for the master electrical lockout system on Line 2. The digital interface is demanding a certified safety director authorization key. Can you read me your master access password over the phone? We will pay a substantial consulting fee, providing you with my statutory access credentials. After resigning my commission would constitute a federal felony. Spencer, I replied calmly. It represents falsification of state safety records. I could face criminal charges and so could you. But Line 2 is completely locked down, Spencer yelled. Julian is losing his mind. The investors arrive tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Then I suggest you hire a state-certified safety director to conduct a legal inspection and reset the system, I advised, and ended the call. Friday morning arrived with clear skies and blazing Florida heat. I arrived at the industrial park at 9:30 in the morning, wearing my navy blue suit and dark sunglasses. I took a seat inside a diner across the street from Plant 7's main entrance, ordering coffee and watching the spectacle unfold. Julian had spared no expense. A red carpet was rolled out from the parking area to the main lobby. Valet parking attendants shuttled luxury sedans while a mobile espresso bar served artisanal coffee to visiting venture capitalists. At 9:45, a side service door burst open, and two workers hastily escorted a young temp worker toward a private vehicle. I could clearly see bright chemical burn marks on the young man's forearm. They were attempting to transport him to an off-the-books urgent care clinic, rather than dialing emergency services, desperate to avoid generating a reportable OSHA injury, right before the investor tour. At 9:58, three dark white government sport utility vehicles bearing official seals of the state of Florida pulled up to the curb, parking directly across the red carpet. Out stepped Chief Inspector Lawson alongside 6 armed state compliance officers and federal safety engineers. Lawson wore his faded blue field jacket, heavy steel-toed boots, and scuffed hard hat. I paid my diner bill, walked across the street, and stood on the public sidewalk outside the perimeter fence. The receptionist attempted to halt Lawson's team in the lobby, but Lawson simply held up his brass state enforcement badge. The receptionist immediately backed away. Julian was in the glass lobby, shaking hands with wealthy institutional investors. When he saw Lawson's team marching toward him, his smile vanished. "This is a private facility," Julian shouted, trying to position himself in front of the hallway. "We are conducting a high-profile investor presentation. You cannot barge into my building. Do you have any idea who my father is?" Lawson stopped and looked down at Julian with disdain. "Son, I do not care if your father is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. I care about who holds the certified Class 4 safety license for this facility. Is Harlan Vance present on these premises?" "Harlan Vance was relieved of his duties on Monday," Julian barked. "We have transitioned to a modernized, streamlined compliance structure." Streamlined? Lawson repeated, turning to his senior deputy. Record that statement verbatim. Under Florida Statute Section 442.1, operating a Class 4 hazardous chemical facility without a certified safety director constitutes an immediate threat to public safety. We are seizing operational control effective immediately. You cannot do that, Julian screamed. Watch me, Lawson replied coldly, and pushed past Julian onto the main assembly deck. The frightened investors followed closely behind to see what was happening. Inside the assembly plant, Line 3 was shaking violently, its heavy mounting brackets vibrating against the concrete slab with a high-pitched metallic screech. Lawson walked directly up to the primary steam valve on Line 3, tapped his pencil against the red line pressure gauge, and turned to Gus Miller. "Shut this line down immediately," Lawson ordered. "I cannot, Chief," Gus shouted back. Executive management engaged the master override and locked manual controls. Lawson turned to Julian. "Hand over manual override keys right now." "Absolutely not," Julian yelled. "Taking this line offline costs $10,000 per minute." Lawson turned to face the gathered investors. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced in a booming voice, "I am declaring this entire manufacturing site an active statutory emergency hazard zone. If you value your physical safety and financial capital, evacuate this perimeter immediately." The investors did not hesitate. The lead venture capitalist looked at the vibrating steam line, looked at Lawson's state enforcement badge, turned on his heel and sprinted toward the main exit. The entire group followed in a chaotic stampede, abandoning promotional gift bags on the floor. "No! Wait!" Julian screamed, chasing them. "It is completely safe." At that exact second, a terrifying whistle pierced the air. The emergency relief valve on Line 3 began venting superheated white steam into upper rafters. A high-pressure jet of vapor cut through the air directly above the executive catwalk. Julian dropped to his hands and knees on the floor, covering his head in terror. Lawson did not flinch. He pulled a massive steel chain and 3 heavy red master lock padlocks from his inspection kit. He walked over to the primary high-voltage circuit breaker for Line 3, grabbed the main iron cutoff handle, and slammed it down with enormous force. The deafening mechanical roar instantly died. The vibrating floor slab settled into total silence. Overhead lighting dropped into dim emergency battery backup mode. Silence crashed over Plant 7 like a tidal wave. Lawson wrapped heavy steel chains around primary power switches, snapped master lock padlocks shut, and slapped a bright orange official state document across the breaker box. Order of Mandate, Site Closure. State Division of Industrial Safety. Tag out every breaker, chemical valve, and loading gate. Lawson commanded his deputies. Lock out the entire perimeter. Nobody operates a machine until a full statutory investigation is completed. I stepped out from behind a concrete pillar inside the loading bay. "Excellent choice of padlocks, Chief," I remarked with a slight smile. "Master Lock Pro Series. Extremely reliable." Julian scrambled up from the floor, his suit covered in industrial grime and rust dust. He spun around, saw me standing next to Lawson, and pointed a trembling finger at my face. "You!" he shrieked. "You organized this whole ambush. You destroyed my company." "I did not destroy anything, Julian," I replied calmly. "The laws of physics and the Florida State Legal Code destroyed your arrogance. I simply ensured an official was present to witness the result. The legal fallout was swift and absolute. The commercial drone operator live-streaming the event to an online investor conference call captured the moment state officials padlocked main power breakers. Within 2 hours, the video went viral across international financial news networks under the headline, "Executive Hair Triggers Emergency State Raid During Investor Demo." Vanguard Heavy Industries' pending $85 million corporate valuation collapsed overnight. The institutional roadshow was canceled, and the executive board convened an emergency Sunday session. Julian Thorne was formally stripped of all executive authority and removed as chief executive officer effective immediately. On Monday morning, old Rupert Thorne personally called my phone 13 times. When I finally answered, the old man was practically in tears. "Harlan," he pleaded, "the boy is an absolute fool. Lawson will not permit us to cut those state padlocks unless you personally sign off on a comprehensive statutory remediation plan as our certified safety director." "Name your price, Harlan," Just come back and save this company. I did not accept his initial offer. I waited 48 hours, allowing corporate pressure to build. When I finally met with the board of directors, I signed an executive contract as an independent chief safety consultant. My new retainer fee was 4 times my previous salary. My contract explicitly stipulated that I reported exclusively to the board of directors, possessing absolute veto power over any operational decision. Furthermore, my primary non-negotiable condition was full back pay and complete job protection for all 280 plant workers during the mandatory closure period. The board signed every single page. Plant 7 officially reopened 4 weeks later, after every pressure valve on Line 3 was completely replaced and recertified by state engineers. The high-pitched vibration in the floor was gone, replaced by the steady, quiet hum of a fully compliant manufacturing facility. The promotional banners were sitting in an industrial dumpster, and uncertified temp workers had been replaced by fully trained union apprentices wearing complete personal protective gear. As I stood on the upper mezzanine deck, on our first morning back, sipping black coffee, Gus Miller drove past on his forklift. He stopped, looked up at my office window, and gave me a respectful 2-fingered tip of his hard hat. I smiled to myself as I watched 280 dedicated workers moving safely across the plant floor. Sometimes corporate arrogance tries to cut corners, but when you build an unyielding paper trail grounded in strict statutory law, the truth will always prevail.